Welcome to the High Vibration Reset. I'm Ciara Conlon, your host and guide, and my goal with this podcast and my work is to simplify transformation and to help you step into your full potential. So if you're done with the struggle and ready for more energy, more flow, and more freedom, stay tuned. Just to let you know that free membership to the Life Flow community is now full, but you can still come join us for a small monthly fee. Less than the price of 2 coffees a month will get you access to daily inspiration, daily support from a fabulous community of women. You will get weekly access to live meditations and to a large library of meditations, free monthly goal-setting sessions to inspire you and keep you accountable. So you can check out the Life Flow community at the link below. In this episode of the podcast, I speak to Niamh Ennis. Niamh is a business mentor and change coach. And in this conversation, we get to speak about a lot of different emotions, grief, guilt, fear, and also how these emotions can impact us in different ways. Niamh tells us about her story and how she navigated tragedy to transform her life and to become the successful coach and mentor she is today. So I really hope you enjoy and benefit from this really valuable conversation. Let's get into it. So welcome, Niamh Ennis, to the High Vibration Reset. I'm delighted to have you here today. Thanks for making the time, and I know you've been very busy of late. So Niamh, if you don't mind, let's start with just learning a little bit more about you.
Sure.
And tell us how you went from being in communications and fundraising to being a business mentor and change coach.
Excellent. Well, look, first of all, thank you, Ciara. It's my complete privilege to be here on the podcast with you today. So I'm absolutely delighted and thank you. It's an interesting question to start off because it has been a circuitous route, for want of a better phrase. And I suppose in summary, to try and take you back, it literally was the story begins when I was in my late 30s and I was working away in PR and communications in Dublin and loving it and living my life like a lot of 30 somethings at that stage, and was somebody who always had a plan in life, and the plan involved, I was engaged to be married to my partner of 10 years. And the plan was very much getting married, buying the house, having a family, keeping the career going. And it was my belief that because I had planned it, it was going to happen. And as we know, when we make plans, God laughs, and that definitely turned out to be true in my case. And literally 4 months before the wedding, my fiance got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and literally 10 days from the day of diagnosis, he died. And so that, obviously, it goes without saying, kind of shook my world. But it also really just started that whole process of, what was I going to do next? What was my life going to look like now that every plan that I had in my head had been altered for me? And of course, as with all these things, as soon as I was starting to find my feet, I got another little knock sideways when my dad, who was very much my rock and always had been, he got sick, and then within 6 weeks he died. So literally, like during that time of my life, there was a lot of loss. I lost my mum not that long after. And so, everything, all the fundamentals, the foundations were changed. Were just, totally reconfigured, and I needed to reconfigure my thinking to get my head into that new space and really to start just connecting with what it is I wanted. And it might sound a little airy fairy, but there was something in the years, the 2, 3, 4 years after Tony died and my dad died, there was this question that just kept coming up, say, in my head and in my heart. It was like that there had to be a reason that this had happened to me in the way it had happened. Now, I'm always very quick to add at this point that what happened to me happens to all of us. The only thing that was different for me was that it all happened quickly and together and at a relatively young age. But, I'm in no way do I, not acknowledge that this happens to everybody at some stage. And so it led me to really start questioning what I was doing in my career, what I was doing with my life, etc. So I underwent very unconsciously a whole series of putting change in place. And it led me to coaching. And I kept thinking, if I was able to help anybody that was going through any kind of change, whether it was loss, whether it was bereavement, whether it was heartbreak, whether it was, having your dreams taken away, no matter what it was, then that might make some sense of what had happened. And so that pushed the door open to coaching. And the coaching was something that I started and I qualified in, and then I started practicing. And initially, it probably felt as much a hobby or a passion project. And then just over time, it just grew and grew. And I really was starting to feel very connected to it. And as somebody that had set up 2 businesses and was lucky enough that they'd been very successful, it automatically led me on to business mentoring, helping people that were going through change in business, change in setting up business. And 10 years later, here I am.
Fantastic. Well done for getting through all of that. So you really had to recreate yourself because, as you say, the whole foundation of your life changed in an instant. And now I understand probably why, the change coach, because that's not usually a term we hear so much in the world of coaching. We'll hear it all the time in organizations, organizational change. But in terms of us ourselves as humans, now you obviously come across this a lot, Niamh, because most humans resist change.
Yep. Yeah, they do.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think it takes these tragic circumstances to get us to course correct or to
Yeah.
go down the path that was really meant for us, I suppose?
Yeah. And I suppose the only thing maybe I might amend there would be that I don't think it takes a tragedy for us to kind of course direct or redirect ourselves. Because in my mind, and having worked in the area of change now for a considerable time, I believe that there are 2 types of change. There's the change that we choose. So if that's to leave your job, if that's to leave a relationship, if that's to move county or country, that's change that you choose. And then there's the change that's forced on us. And usually 9 out of 10 times that's unwelcome change. It's change that we haven't chosen, but it's change that we find ourselves having to navigate. And so in my work, particularly in the business mentoring, it's usually working with people that have chosen to make change. So that you're already starting from a place of positivity and a place of energy and excitement. But the other kind of change that we're very resistant to is the one that's forced on us because we don't like it. And I think, what you say is so true there, Ciara, that as humans, most of us don't like change. And again, not to go a little woo-woo on this, but as a star sign, I'm a Taurian, and I'm a very typical Taurian.
Me too.
Oh, isn't that fascinating now? And then you will know that as Taurians, we are especially resistant to change because we like structure and we like routine and we like knowing what's happening and when it's happening. Some people might call us control freaks. I beg to differ. I just say we're very typical of our star signs. And joking aside, like I've always been somebody that needed the safety and security of structure and routine, to move along in life. So as the change coach, as somebody that encourages change, somebody that absolutely promotes the benefits of change, I have no problem admitting that I still hate change. I still hate it to this day. You can hate something, you can resist something, you can dislike it, but still do it and still know that it's good for you and that the benefits in the end will be worth the discomfort the change brings about.
Yeah, yeah. That's interesting because I had a conversation recently with one of my best friends, and I said to her, I'm Taurus. And she said, What? No, you're not. Because she's an April Taurian.
Okay.
It was very funny
Yeah.
because I'm, maybe an atypical Taurian where, yes, I'm stubborn as the bull.
Yeah.
And, but I actually crave change.
Okay.
I want to change too much almost,
Okay.
and it was
Okay.
that opposite of needing structure that led me or wanting structure that led me into the world of productivity because I
Yeah.
needed all of that to be
Right.
able to function
Yes.
in the
Yes.
world. But
Yes.
anyway,
Yeah.
that's besides that. Do you think there's a difference, Niamh, in that massive change that happens with a tragedy or with maybe a divorce or something or a redundancy? So, is there a difference in the depth of the benefit, let's say? Or can we, like most people, business owners who are going out and deciding to make a change or start a new business or, change something about ourselves, do you think the results are different? I hope that makes sense, that
Yeah, I
question.
mean, I do, and I think I think it still comes back to depending on whether you choose it or it's forced on you. And I think when we choose change, we're very clear as to what our vision for it is, what we want at the end of it, and so with that clarity, we can map out a plan. We can feel very productive. We can feel that we know what direction we're heading in. Very different to the change that's forced on us because inevitably or more often than not that's out of our control, and so we're kind of sitting there waiting for the next wave to come in our direction. It's a very different energy, and that's why choosing change feels much more empowering because it is more empowering. You're in control, whereas the other kind you're not.
That's true. But do you think sometimes it's that element of we don't always know what we need or what we want? We go after sometimes goals thinking that's what we want next, but actually it's the landslide that hits us from the side that pushes us in a different direction than we ever even knew. Do you
Yeah.
see that happen with people?
Well, I do insofar as when one of the first steps when it comes to bringing about change or to doing something different, you have to be really clear on what the end result is, on what you want the outcome to be. Whether we call that, like in business world, we call that our vision or our, the big picture strategy. You have
Yeah,
to
yeah.
know what that is because you cannot, and actually it's the same in life or in business. We call it what's your vision or what's your main driver or what is it that motivates you. But ultimately, they're just all posh ways of asking the same question. You have to know, what is it you want? What is it you want from life? From, say, it could be for your health, for your finances, sorry, God, it just pulled something on me back there. It could be something that simple, or it could, when it comes to business, you have to really know what's the end game, what's the end goal. And if you don't have that clarity, that's then where you're much more susceptible to things coming at you from left, right, and center.
Yeah, yeah, agree. It's so essential to have those targets in place
Exactly.
that, gives us that direction. But there's a lot of people, I suppose, in life that don't know what they want. They have an idea, but I find that with a lot of people that come into my coaching program, and you probably find this with yours, it's that, you know, they know they want more success, or they know they want more money, or whatever it is, but actually defining, the actual thing. A lot of people say, I don't really know what I want. What's your advice there? Or how do you tackle that with your clients? How do you
So,
get them that
yeah.
clarity?
Yeah, so look at, I mean, again, it's totally individual, isn't it, for every client, and you can tell, hopefully, with the benefit of experience and the benefit of having worked with other people in similar situations, that you can tell the best way to direct and navigate them. But ultimately, what you're trying to do is to help them get to that point where they're more clear on what it is they want. And for a lot of people, the starting point can often be getting them to articulate what it is they don't want or what it is they don't like. But for me, my feeling on this is that it will always come back to helping them to connect with what they want, cutting out the noise, cutting out the what is expected of them, what they are watching and seeing other people doing, what the
Mhm.
society tells them they should want, what the world tells them they should want, what their families are telling them they should want, because that's so much of the noise that's in people's heads and its heart and their hearts. So when you get past that, when you get them to be able to get past that, it is incredible then how the answers start to come. And it's not that, like, they don't flood in, it doesn't happen overnight. It's about helping them find the right questions to be, allowing them to explore what it is they want.
Mm, mm. And getting in touch with your intuition
Of
to
course.
kind of
Yeah.
know that this is the
Yeah.
right path.
Yeah.
I had a great conversation with James Sweetman there recently on the podcast about intuition. So if anybody's interested in learning more about that, check out that episode. But you have a great line in your book, Niamh, and I downloaded your book on Kindle at the weekend and had a good binge of it, which is a great book. Highly recommend.
Thank you.
Get Unstuck
Get
is
on
the
stuff.
name of it.
Yeah.
And the line is, change is changing what we do, and transformation is changing who we are. I thought that was a great line, and kind of makes it more clear in terms of the difference,
Yeah.
I suppose, between the two. Yeah.
Because both words are bandied around a lot, and used, and it's not that there's a total clear definition, but it helps us to understand that it's easier to make a change because we can just do something differently or approach something differently, or change is something that we can do instantly and immediately. And yet it might be a change that works, it might be one that doesn't, but actually transforming is something that's deeper, and transforming, because it impacts on who we are rather than what we're doing. It has a much more profound impact on us and on our
Yeah.
lives and our careers.
And I suppose that explains where my thoughts were going in terms of when change is enforced on us. Often it's a quicker transformation as
Yes.
we're forced into that big life questions and life
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
But just to come back then to your book, and the title of it, Get Unstuck, because obviously that is a word that we hear a lot as coaches. I feel stuck. Do you think that people are really as stuck as they think they are? And why do you think that that's such a common experience for people, for women? What's your take on that, Niamh?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, if somebody feels stuck, then they're stuck. There's there's no disputing
Point,
that
good point.
in my mind. That it's like, you can't convince somebody that they're not stuck, because it's a feeling, it's valid, it's real for them. It's the only way then to help them get past that process of feeling stuck is to show them what the alternatives might be, how it would look and feel to perhaps try alternatives or to experience something that feels different. But actually, yeah, that feeling of being stuck, or that stagnant feeling, or being, caught stuck in a rut or unable to move, it is a really common feeling. And it's just, that's the expression, I think, of almost, it's the catch-all for all of those emotions of people. I can't do it, I'm not able to do it, I'll do that when, or I'll do that as soon as something else happens. That's the element where we can convince ourselves that we're more stuck than we are. But we are stuck. If we think we're stuck, we're stuck.
Okay. And as you say, it's a catch-all
Yeah.
phrase. So which do you see most with people? Is it self-inflicted procrastination? Is it, what are the main things that you see, let's say, with the people that you
Yeah.
work with?
And I mean, again, you'll probably hate this answer, but I see it all. Like, I genuinely, I mean, again, because it's so bespoke and it's so individual. Like, some people, yeah, definitely. I think in business, procrastination plays a huge part, but it's the fear of not being able, the fear of being exposed, the fear of, if I try and fail. Or equally, if I try and succeed, I'm not so sure what I would do either. So, fear keeps people stuck in business. In life, it really varies. It varies in terms of their age, the stage they're at, their predicament, their situation, how much attention they're paying to the people around them. What are the stories that they're carrying in their head that they believe are true that mightn't be, and so it can involve and require a huge amount of dismantling old stories and belief systems. So that's why I was saying, I know you'd probably hate the answer, but it really depends on who's sitting in front of me to be able to know,
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. But fear is a massive one with most
Massive.
humans.
Yeah.
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 But you talk about false fears. So what do you mean when you talk about false fears that people have? Are those fears that you've spoken about not real, or are they real? Or are
Yeah,
there
no,
other
they're real.
fears?
They're real. It's the same as stuck. If somebody tells you that they're fearful of something, that's their fear. And like, I'm not saying that you validate everything that somebody tells you, but we all, with our friends, with our families, we all need, sorry, my back is at me, and I'm sorry, I keep it's going into spasm. But we all need to just to acknowledge that if somebody feels fear, it's real. It's because it's real to them, and all those fears that I mentioned there are very real, and definitely ones that as coaches and mentors, we need to help people not get over, not overcome, but live with and manage. And that's a big thing around fear. It's never trying to help somebody cure their fear, because fear is there for a reason and it serves a purpose in a lot of cases. But it's just to make sure that it doesn't block you, it doesn't get in your way.
Yeah. And then if we come back to the people who feel stuck,
Yeah.
or uh, what's your advice, or do you have tips for where to start?
If you feel stuck in what scenario?
So you would have different advice, then tell us in both, if it's in business or in life. What would be your advice in either or for taking that first step, making the change?
Oh, well, I think I'd always go back to helping them, first of all, get clear on what it is they want. What's the end outcome? What's the final result? Because to be able to get unstuck, you have to know what direction you want to go in. So there's no point in me working with somebody and saying that you've to stop being unstuck. It's like they have to see this is where I'm going, and these are the steps that I need to put in place that will help me get there. And by the time they're there, they realize then that they're not as stuck anymore.
Okay.
Is that?
And in your case, Niamh, did you feel stuck back then,
Yeah.
when you'd gone through what you'd been through?
Oh,
Um,
I didn't just feel stuck. I was stuck. I was stuck on repeat, and I remember, and like I said this in the book. Like I remember even having a conversation with my best friend at the time, and just saying to her, now this was about 4 years after the first death,
mhm.
and saying, I'm worried that I'm at the stage where I feel I'm milking it. And like that would seem like a bizarre statement to anybody else, but it was for me. Just like I was able to recognize that I was caught in that loop, that I actually had lost myself, understandably, albeit, but I had lost myself in the grief and the loss, and didn't know who I was without the sympathy, didn't know who I was without the, you know, the chance to tell my story. And so it was just that realization that actually, this isn't serving me anymore, and I'm stuck in a loop of probably self-pity. And so it was only when I really was able to articulate that I was able to start to change it.
So it was acknowledging it, first of all,
Totally.
recognizing
Yeah. Yeah.
what was going on.
Recognizing it. And it's one of those situations that if somebody else said that to me, I've never spoken to them again. But I came to that conclusion myself. But because I knew that I had reached a time in my life where grief was stopping me from doing other things, that it had really got a grip on me. And I think that can happen to people consciously. And it's not just about grief, but it's the story that we tell ourselves can really keep us stuck. I'm not able to do that. I'd love to do that, but I couldn't. That's when we sit and look and admire other things that other people are doing, or that, that we think, oh, that wouldn't be for me. They're stories that we tell ourselves. They're the belief systems that we're holding on to. The minute you acknowledge that you're caught in that loop and that you're stuck in that loop is when you can start trying to move on.
So, as you said, you didn't know who you were without the sympathy, because that was what your life became
Yeah.
after the grief.
Yeah. And like I often say to people, the head tilt. I had got so used to the head tilt where, I knew I was, that's the girl. She lost her fiance just months before the wedding. Then she lost her dad. Then she lost her mom. And people would go, and how are you? And the head tilt. I'd always wait for the head tilt. And like, that was a huge comfort. Don't get me wrong. In the early months and years, and people were so good and so supportive and understanding. But time comes in everybody's life, in every situation, where you have to be able to say, right, it's time now for me to reshape, realign my life, reframe my life. And that for me was where the get unstuck part came, that it was only when I made the decision and chose to become unstuck that things started to move.
So you recognized you needed to change. And did you know where you wanted to go at that stage? Did you have a goal, or was it just, I don't want to be here?
But no, at that stage, no, certainly there were no goals. There was no idea. It was literally following the breadcrumbs. It was like, I need to stop feeling like this, and then that'll take me to the next stage, the next stage. And it was recognizing I needed to get help, recognizing that, that I couldn't do it on my own, and recognizing that actually, that I had an idea that there was something more for me out there. But of course, I just didn't know at that stage what it was. But that actually all, once I made that decision, then that all happened fairly quickly after.
Okay. And do you think, Niamh, that there is an amount of time? Now, of course, this is different for different people, but, in your experience, having been through a lot and, this grieving process, do you think there's amount of time before people are able to kind of say, okay, this needs to change?
No.
Or is it just different for
It
everybody?
really is. It really is. And like, I've worked with a lot of people, even in business, who have been bereaved and are grieving, and you just see it all the time. That cliche of "it's different for everyone" is so true. It's, like, because my personality was so much of always wanting to be in control, of always, being the problem solver. It took me 4 years to recognize that I needed help. Whereas maybe somebody else might have realized that after 2 years, or in some cases, people, it can take them like longer. It varies. It varies from the support system they have around them to, the circumstances around the tragedy. Like there's so many factors. So unfortunately, there is no stock answer to that. It takes as long as it takes.
Yeah, yeah. And people, I suppose, process it in different ways.
Oh,
Some people
definitely.
lapse afterwards. Some people keep pushing because they need the distraction. I lost my mum last year,
Oh.
and I suppose I was, my typical patterns are overworking
Mhm,
and pushing myself through
mhm.
things. So I went straight into some work projects after a
Yeah,
couple of weeks and, overdid it, of course.
yeah,
But there was one thing for me that kind of at the time I felt so low and so depressed. It was like, how can I ever find joy within this again? And then something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, that almost that feeling that she was talking to me and saying, I knew that she wanted me to be happy. Go enjoy yourself, she'd always say to all of us when
yeah,
we'd leave the house. Go enjoy your life.
yeah,
So I think I was out in nature going for a walk, and there was this realization that joy could sit alongside the grief.
yep, yep.
At what point did you find that you could be happy again, or that there was joy there somewhere for you?
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember exactly when, but the feeling I remembered most in relation to that was the guilt. The guilt when I'd find myself laughing about something, or the guilt when I'd find myself thinking about something different. So the guilt was what pointed me first to the fact of, like, it is okay to be able to switch off from the grief, take a little break from the grief. And I have always been very lucky that I have a core group of girlfriends around me that really held me up through all of the bereavements. But one of the things that is the gel and the glue to our friendships is laughter. So, I remember even when we were the weekend that Tony died and we were organizing his funeral, and we were laughing about certain things, and will we do this, and what if this happens, and it's not even to say that, like, the fine line between laughter and sadness, but it's that the
Mm.
people around you can kind of show you that there is joy, there is, and it is okay to laugh, and so not to feel too guilty when the joy starts to come back in. And the thing about grief, and sadly, Ciara, you know this as well, is that you'll feel joy, you'll feel laughter, and then the sadness and the tears and they will come out of nowhere. And it's recognizing that in grief, the one thing I think we will all agree on is it's not linear, that you will go through every emotion 7, 8, 10, 28 times. And yet that's part of the process, isn't it?
My brother-in-law described it beautifully, which really helped me at the beginning. And he said, grief is like fog. You never know when it's coming, how thick it will be, or how long it's going to last,
Yeah,
but it will
yeah,
always
yeah,
dissipate.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
is, and I think it is the hardest part of it is the fact that you think, okay, I feel good now, and it could be months, it could even be years. I feel good, I think, and you'll only say this to yourself, not to, but like, I think I'm actually moving past it, and you'll think that, and then you're not. It could be a smell, it could be a memory, it could be, it could be anything, and I suppose that's why anniversaries and all those special occasions are so lovely, because it gives you that permission to be able to go back into that space again. And that's why it's so important that we talk about the people that have died as often as we can with the people that will let us.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned another emotion there, which is very popular amongst women, and that is the guilt.
Yeah, yeah,
I always call guilt a wasted emotion. I'm probably too aggressive towards it, but I think we waste so much time with this feeling, this emotion that really plays no or has no benefit to our evolution or
yeah.
our development as human beings. I think it's a very, very old prehistoric emotion that wanted to keep us part of the clan. Do you see guilt a lot with the women that you work with? And how do you help them process it or move through it?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, you're right. There's guilt everywhere, and it's not even just as women. I think as Irish people, we're very connected to guilt. Um, but it's interesting as you say it. It's not something that comes up a lot in work. It, people will hide behind guilt. People will use guilt as an avoidance technique. Um, but where I hear and talk about guilt most in my work, it's when it comes to boundaries, to putting boundaries in place.
Mhm.
Because I'll often say to people, you need a boundary. How? Because you feel resentment. You've put a boundary in place. How? Because you feel guilt. And so it's like when I hear the word guilt, and particularly in my work world, I tend to think of it as in it's a good thing, because it means you've put the boundaries in place, and it's the indicator. Yes, guilt, we all feel it, it's there all the time, and it's a bit like fear. You can acknowledge it, it has its place, but as long as you don't let it rule the roost, and you learn to live with it and work around it rather than try to get rid of it.
Okay. Niamh, do you have any high vibrational rituals or habits that keep you positive and energized and connected?
Well, as in that keep me energized, I don't know that I am energized, but let's pretend that I am. No, I do have rituals. I have very clear, non-negotiable rituals, that I am very and I would call them high vibrational, but that, as I say, they are non-negotiable. It means getting up at crazy o'clock in the morning, but I have journaled every day of my life since I was about 6 years of age. So journaling is definitely, has to feature in my morning rituals. Journaling, nature, and movement. Those three things. So I will always journal. I will always get out. And I convince myself it's the multitasking, but I take the dog out for a walk. I'm out in nature. I'm lucky enough to live very near to a beautiful woods that I go to every single morning. And so, after my journaling, out with the dog, go to the woods, and then movement. And the movement isn't the walking of the dog. I will always do something like Pilates or a spin class or something for about 30 minutes that's about moving. So those three things are and I do them every day, every week, without fail. The days I don't,
Yeah.
I feel totally discombobulated. The days I don't are the days I know I don't give my clients as much of myself as I could or should. So those rituals aren't just for them. The primary reason for them is they're for me. They're my time, because I spend all my day, whether it's through business or through life or whatever, looking after other people, taking on other people's concerns and problem solving for other people. Those rituals in the morning are me doing it for myself. So they're just non-negotiable. And for everyone that works with me, they cannot finish working with me without having introduced at least one ritual. I just think everybody needs a ritual in their life.
And what I say to people, not because you have to, but because you want to.
Yeah, at the beginning it'll feel like you have to, but it's rarely like, you know, after a while you'll start to really see and feel the benefits, and that's why it's such a wonderful thing to do.
And it becomes much easier.
Yeah.
So Niamh, I have 100 more questions for you, but I know you're under pressure for time. So do you want to just tell us what projects you have going on at the moment, or how people can get in touch with you or work with you?
Yeah, well, look at the website, niamhennis.com is a good way, or I'm on Instagram at one Niamh Ennis. And, you know, in terms of programs, like I'm running a business mastermind at the moment, which is probably my most popular program, and that's brilliant, because we have, like, you know, 15, 20 women business owners that are, you know, solo entrepreneurs, really eager, really anxious, really dedicated and devoted to their business, and just wanting to, you know, move to the next level. So that's definitely a piece that really energizes me and really excites me. And then I offer different programs for people to work with me on a one-to-one basis. And so like, you know, I think you and I are fortunate in that we love what we do, and for as long as you love what you do, I think it shows in the work that you produce.
Absolutely. And we'll put all the links below in the show notes to get in touch with Niamh. But look, thanks a million, and we'll let you run on to the rest of your day. Big hug.
Thank you so
And
much.
yeah, hope to connect with you soon, Niamh.
Lovely. Thanks a million, Ciara. Thanks so much.
So thanks for tuning in to the podcast. If you're not already following me on Instagram or on TikTok, come follow me at Coach Ciara Conlon. And of course, please follow the podcast. It really helps to get the message out there. Share it with friends and family, because I'm sure there's some episode there that somebody in your life needs to hear. Now, don't forget to check out the Life Flow community. It's a wonderful community of really supportive women, and we're all there just to uplift each other and to keep the vibration high. It also helps to stick with your habits and goals, so make sure you check that out. So thanks again for tuning in, and as always, have a great inner day.